There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I want to thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining us again. Man, I'm excited. We have a great show today, a fantastic guest. I'm excited about that as well. But I want to tell you guys, if you're here for the first time, The Productive Podcaster is a podcast designed for podcasters. The whole purpose is to make sure that you can be more productive in what you're doing as a podcaster. Now, productive is a relative term. It could mean bringing in more guests. It could mean bringing in more listeners. It could mean making more money from your podcast. You have more sponsors. Whatever it may be to you, we just want to provide the content to help you to do that for your podcast. So that's what we do here at The Productive Podcaster. Another thing we do is a segment that we love to start off the show with, and it is called Pros and Cons.
Pros and Cons.
Now, what is pros and cons, you ask? Pros and cons is our way of helping you by giving you tips that can help you to be a better podcaster. What we want to do is provide you with information that you can use in your podcast so that you can do better and not have the negative things that happen to other podcasters. So today in Pros and Cons, we are going to talk about when you get comfortable talking. Here's the thing. When you're talking to your friends, when you're talking to your family, you don't find it that difficult to talk to them, do you? You can just easily just relay your message, say whatever you got to say, laugh, joke about it, have fun with it. Well, as you can see, I stumble over words myself, and you do the same thing when you talk to your friends and family, but you don't go, oh my gosh, I got to start over. I can't believe I messed up. It's okay. Be human. Be human. Because here's the thing about podcasting. People that are listening want to relate to you. They want to relate to you. So they need to know that you are kind of like them. They need to know that you have some similar traits that they have. When you try to sound like you're perfect, it comes across as someone who's trying to be perfect. Nobody wants that because we know we can't be perfect. So now you're just saying, okay, I'm better than you. So don't do that. Just be yourself. Be yourself. Unless you think you're perfect. But just be yourself. It's okay to be yourself when you're doing a podcast. People will relate to that. Your particular audience wants you. They want you. So that doesn't mean that you have to be quiet and mealy mouth. It means that you project, but still be yourself. Talk to the people, engage the people, have fun with the people. It's okay to have fun on your podcast, believe it or not. I don't care what your topic is. You can enjoy it. You can enjoy it while you're doing your podcast. Why? Because it's your show. It's your podcast to run. So don't get caught up in the woo-woo and the wah-wah and thinking that you have to be so buttoned up, that you have to be so perfect all the time. It's best to just be you. Your audience will relate to you. Here's the thing. A lot of you may not even have found your audience yet. You may not know exactly who they are. You may have an idea of where you want to go, but meaning that you have not actually found them to the point where they're going to follow you to the ends of the earth. You need to find those people, but they need to know who you are. So you can't be someone else and then all of a sudden show up as this person on the podcast. So make sure you're the same person through and through. The people will relate to that. So that today, guys, is Pros and Cons. I want to thank you guys for that segment. What we're going to do is take a break right here, listen to this commercial, and when we come back, we're going to have our very, very special guest.
You've heard the rumblings. You even thought about starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all of the hard work for you so that you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. I am Barrett Matthews, of course. I'm excited right now because I get to interview one of my friends. You know, it's always good when you can interview someone that you know, you care about, you've known for quite some time. But it's more than just that I'm interviewing a friend. I'm bringing somebody to you who is changing lives every single day. And when I say every single day, I literally mean that. He is helping people with his podcast, The Happy Entrepreneur. And I'm bringing none other than the happy entrepreneur himself, Mr. Shay Brown. Shay, welcome to the Productive Podcaster.
Well, thanks a lot, Barrett. Thanks for having me here. First, let me just greet all of your listeners that are out there and all the viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in on the Productive Podcaster. This is the place to be if you want to not only elevate your brand, not only elevate yourself, but if you want to impact more people, then Barrett Matthews, the visionary, is the one not only to follow, not only to listen to, but at the end of the day, to make sure that in some cases you emulate what he's doing, but do it a little bit better, because there's always another level, and that's what you have in it. So I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about something that we all need to do, which is really, at the end of the day, building a media brand. I mean, you think about it, at the end of the day, isn't that what we're doing? And so I'm excited. Thanks a lot, Barrett, for having me here.
Thank you.
I'm looking
and I
forward
did
to
not
the
pay him to say that, guys. I did not pay him to say that. But so Shay, I have to ask you, the Productive Podcaster is the name that I have because I'm actually doing two podcasts. I'm still maintaining my business. The Happy Entrepreneur. How did that name even come about?
You know, that name came about through a conversation that I was having with the one and only Trevor Ott. And we were at a place at Glen Garn's location, and we were there, and he wanted to go in with this whole narrative, which is true, that's his style, that folks need to do certain things in order to be successful in their business. And I had another narrative, and my narrative was they didn't have to do anything. They're already working hard. I don't need to tell them they need to believe in themselves. They're there, and that anyone that shows up, they already have a big heart. You don't have to grind all night and be a grindpreneur. You don't have to be a solopreneur and hope you can make it going there. That you can be happy and an entrepreneur at the same time. Just because you call yourself a happy entrepreneur doesn't mean that you're naive. Just because you're happy doesn't mean you think that every day is rainbow, cupcakes, and unicorns. Just because you're happy doesn't mean your stuff don't stink and you don't make some mistakes. You don't fall flat on your face. It doesn't mean that. What it means is that you have joy on the inside. It means that you have peace on the inside. It means you're comfortable with who you are and that you can have it all. You don't have to sacrifice your business for your family. Both can come together when you follow a system, you follow a structure, and you follow something that is in sequence, that is possible. And so that's how he said, you know what? I'm going to call you the happy entrepreneur. You're always happy and you're an entrepreneur. You're the happy entrepreneur. Well, I'll tell you, Barrett, in about 1 minute, Barrett, I resisted that. So no, don't call me a goddamn thing. I'm just sure. Okay with that. I don't need no tag. I don't need no label. I am who I am, and I'm okay with that. But then, Barrett, I know that there were a number of folks out there that were like myself. And maybe that's some of your listeners where they're out there. And I used to get up every day and sometimes I wasn't happy. but I was still piecing inside. And sometimes I wondered and questioned, is it possible? So I said, you know what? If it's possible, let me go find some entrepreneurs that are out there that are happy. Doesn't mean they're running around, but they've got peace, they've got joy, and they feel good about what they're doing. So it's not about the money they make, but it's about the meaning they have in the world. It's not about the income that goes in their pocket, but it's about the impact. And in doing that, and doing this search that I've been on this journey to find happy entrepreneurs, people who are happy, and to share their secrets with the world. Well, the tag just kind of stayed, and that's how we ended where we are now. And that's why we have what's called the Happy Entrepreneur, because we believe that the results that show up in your life are just as important as the results that show up in your bank account. Let me say that again, just really slow, so you make sure you sink that in. You say, what is the happy entrepreneur? We have one belief. It's our core value, and that is the results that show up in your life. Well, they're just as important as the results show up in your bank account. So I'm happy to be here, and I am the happy entrepreneur.
I love it. Now, that being said, being that the happy entrepreneur, Shay has the hottest nighttime business podcast out there. It is the hottest, and it is the happy entrepreneur. Shay, how did that come about?
You know, Barrett, it came about because of two reasons. First, it came through a failure, which I could say I was in a lab somewhere and I planned to have this show, and this show was going to do what it's doing today. I didn't know that. What I knew is that at 11 o'clock at night, everyone isn't sleeping. What I knew at 11 o'clock at night, 5 years prior to the show, that I used to do a training at 11 o'clock at night on a conference call with sales folks who wanted to improve the quality of their selling skills. And so I decided, through the power of these fiber optic lines, that let's open up, let people, they can watch. It'll be fun. I'll teach, and the whole world can learn. But I found nobody wanted to watch sales training at 11 o'clock at night, by the way. They had other plans, and that was okay. And that was okay. Then Barrett, it evolved. I said, well, no, we can help. We'll call it the lab. Go back and look in the archives, and the lab came out, and the lab had a purpose, and that was to help entrepreneurs. It was always in the spirit of helping, always in the spirit of giving. And then that failed. Nobody gave a darn about watching training every night, 11 o'clock at night. And there was one conversation I was having doing training with another guest, Barrett, and we were just talking. And I had so much fun being in front of that camera. I don't know if I was watching or not. And I'm like, man, I'm learning. And I said to myself, what if we just call it the Happy Entrepreneur Show? I don't have no producers. There's nobody freaking writing a check. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to talk to other people. I'm going to discover how they're doing what they're doing. And if someone wants to listen, then great. If not, no big deal. And that's how the Happy Entrepreneur Show started. It started with the goal of being the #1 business development and revenue focused late night show in the country. But it started with a mission. Jot this down in your notes. The mission was to serve, that's the formula, plus serve, that's the formula, plus give value. And that was it. That was the only reason I showed up, was to serve, and that was to serve, find out what is your secret to success. That's what the guests are providing. And then it was to serve more, and that was open up to the public. This is Shay, you need to charge. We're not doing that. Shay, you're not selling anything. We're not doing that either. Shay, you've got to change the format. I'm not doing that. Nobody has to watch. And that we're going to give value. And we were blessed because during these uncertain times, Barrett, nobody knows about the other 13 months. They don't know about the nights that I don't think anybody was watching but Mother Dear and a few friends. They don't know about that. All they saw was in this moment that the world came to a stop. They call it pivot. But as entrepreneurs, we don't pivot. We're always changing. This ain't nothing new for us. We're changing and changing and changing and changing. But this pandemic, what's going on is important. I've lost family to this, so I'm not making fun of it.
Me too.
Businesses have been impacted. My friends have been impacted. I've gone and watched funerals on Zoom. It's very serious. But here's what we found out, Barry, and I'll come back to you. The show evolved even more because we were built for it. We were ready for it. There was hours and hours and hours behind the scenes, not planning for that moment, not waiting for that moment. But when the moment hit, we were already doing it. And then we became a platform that others could rally around and say, you know what, today at 12 o'clock, today at 3 o'clock, we started doing 3 to 4 shows a day. They said, Shay, why are you doing it? You're going to burn out. I say, look, I'll be dead longer than I'm alive. And I'm going to give it everything I got right now. And I had to do it because people were home and they started watching. And that's how it exploded, Barry. That's how it went to an entirely different level because of the folks and the viewers that shared it and saw the value. So I wish I could say it was me, wish I could say it was a plan, wish I could say it was a team, but it's all about viewers that come together. And we thank every single one of them. They hit a share button, they hit a watch party button, and they spread the word.
Yeah, say one thing. I picked up that quote from you a while ago when you said, "I'll be dead longer than I'm alive," and I was like, "Wow, that's a deep one," but it's true. So you better do it all you can while you're alive. Now, as far as your show, how often do you do your show?
The show, the anchor show, I always call it, is 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is a good time because it's 10 p.m. Central Time and it's 8 o'clock Pacific Time. But we don't really look at time anymore because if you think about it, what is time?
Right.
We're in a media space right now. And so it doesn't matter what time the show airs. And this is something I would share with all the folks who are part of the productive podcaster tribe and family. It's never about the views. It's never about who's listening at that moment. Jot this in your notes. It's always, through my discovery, been about the replays. And so while a show starts at 11 o'clock at night, there's so many folks that say, Shay, I'm asleep. I can never see it. But I do get a chance to go back in.
Yes, that's what you're getting.
When I see a guest or a topic that speaks to me, I go back and watch that on my time. And when I hear that they downloaded something and I'm not there, that's a digital Shay Brown media empire. When I'm seeing and hearing that they're watching something and I'm not there, and yet they're benefiting, then it gives me the energy. It gives me the joy to do it one more time. And it's kind of like running a marathon. I've run 5 marathons, right? And this is what I would share with all the podcasters out there. It's not about me running a marathon, okay? It's not about 26.2 miles, although that's very hard to do, by the way. But I remember when I first ran, I didn't work as hard. I didn't train as hard. And around mile 20, it's like, bam, I got a shot in one calf, and then bam, a shot in another calf. That's called hitting the wall. And I wanted to stop. I just told myself I can put one foot in front of the other foot and keep dropping the foot. Just keep dropping the foot. I can keep going. The law of gravity would take me, and that's what's going to happen. There might be some times where you're like, I'm not sure. But you've got to be consistent. So how did the show, when is the show? 11 o'clock at night. Now, during the special time, we've done special broadcasts.
Yeah.
Because our audience needed it. Because the people who I was bringing on, these megastars who, in the past, some of them didn't return my calls. Nothing personal to them at all, but they would not. But their whole income had been wiped out. And in many cases, many of them just wanted a place to come help somebody else. And so we became just one, just like your show, Barrett, your show, just one of the stops along their tour. And we're forever grateful because we didn't pay one dime to one person. They didn't sell anything on the shows. They came to serve. Remember that? Plus serve. You remember this formula? Plus give value. And I told him, you do that, the magic happens.
Now, your show airs what days?
Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over at happyentrepreneurship.com. That's my shameless plug. www.happyentrepreneurship.com. If you're on Facebook, you can just type in happy space entrepreneur space show in the search, and you'll see the business page come up. If you're on podcast, just type in Happy Entrepreneur Show with Shay Brown. If you're on Roku or you're on Amazon Fire TV or you're on Apple TV, just do the same thing. You'll find us. But again, Barrett, the show is only successful as all the guests who give their time, their expertise, and their experience, and all of the viewers who share the message to bless other folks.
Amen to that.
That's something that I don't take lightly anymore.
Right.
It's a charge. It's a responsibility. And I have fun. I mean, if I had my way, I'm not a marketer. It would just be called Happy Hour with Shay Brown. Like you and I would have happy hour every night at 11 o'clock. But, branding folks. Can't have branding folks involved. So we got Happy Entrepreneur Show. What can I say? I like Happy Hour with Shay Brown.
So Shay, because I asked you that question because I wanted people to hear that there are people out there who are contemplating putting together podcasts, and I want them to understand that this man works. It's fun, but it takes some work putting it in. It's a lot of fun when you're doing what you love, but it takes some work. Now, Shay, how many shows have you done?
We were adding up because one day we were going 7 days a week. I think this year we're going to do about 450 shows that are in the queue. You can go look at the YouTube channel. Folks, I can't make this up. And it's not about me. It's about what's the best use of my time as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And the best use of my time right now is time in front of people who have a problem.
Yeah.
And so this media does that. So you're going to hear shows like, oh my gosh, that's okay. Just do one. And if you love it, do it again. And then the law of time and the rule of 72 and so forth will be on your favor. Because one thing I like about views, they never go down. There's always another one. I never see a subtraction from there. So we've done a lot of shows, Barrett. And why, Shay, how did you get that number? Well, you think about it. We were doing it 7 days a week pretty easily, and then 2 or 3 shows. But then in between that, I was doing master classes. So I was doing a master class on Sunday and a master class on Wednesday. And then between that, I was doing these motivational like moments in time, right? And so I would share those videos. And so again, Barry, let me answer your question. Over 500 shows will probably be done this year, but I do it because I love it. I do it because I'm learning, and I do it because we're impacting lives much faster than we ever could if I had to wait and go one-to-one.
Yeah. So I gotta ask you rather, because you've done a lot of shows. What would you say has been your most interesting show and why?
You know, that
could
question
be
comes
fun,
up.
Could be bloopers, could be whatever. Just
Yeah. That show comes up an awful lot. The show I enjoyed the most, there was a lot of fun, was one we just did with like 5 guests, which I'd never done before, right?
Wow.
Not at one time, because we had one guest come in the green room, then we had 4 guests up at the same time, and we were doing this interview, and it's all around their book. Trailblazers is the book with Karen Cherry is one of the founders of that movement.
Yeah.
And the reason I enjoyed that, it was like I could interview one person. They had a chapter totally different than the next person that came up. And so I felt like it was 5 shows within one show, but it was how I learned and how I saw the view of the world from someone else.
Yeah.
And to see the technology come together, and to know that there was many folks watching, that was just a ball of fun. And they were all women. So here's a guy interviewing women right on Trailblazers as a woman, what it takes. So it was like cool.
So before we wrap up, I want you to please let everyone know where they can see and hear the Happy Entrepreneur.
Sure. There's 2 things I would say before I wrap up. Number 1, if you're watching and listening right now, take this link, The Productive Podcaster, and pay it forward to your network. You might know someone out there that they want to leave a legacy. I'm working with someone right now, and she said, I just want to leave a legacy behind. And her voice, her audio voice is her legacy, although she's blessing other folks. You might know another business owner out there that's saying, hey, I've got to be in this digital space, and having their own podcast is another way of doing that. Make sure to connect with theproductivepodcaster.com, because not only is Barrett here providing value, but what you don't know is that behind the scenes, he's producing so many other folks who at one point were like me. I'm a stutterer. I still stutter. People remind me of that all the time. I talk fast. People remind me of that. I jack up names because I'm dyslexic. So sometimes I'll say Barat and it's Barrett, and that happens on the show no matter how hard I practice. And so you don't always have to get it right. You just got to get going. So I'm going to suggest you connect with Barrett. That's something he didn't ask for. But anyone that's there that can serve, that can help someone else, then we want to make sure we do that. That's number 1. And number 2, here's how you can connect with us. And it's not about me, but I want you to plug in to the movement, the Happy Entrepreneurs Tribe. I want you to plug in to other entrepreneurs who are like me. They're not perfect. They have families, and sometimes things aren't right in their family. They've got financial commitments, and sometimes things aren't right. They hire folks to do work for their customers, and I've been there, and the people didn't do the work, or it didn't happen, and they're still responsible. So they're not perfect, okay? But they're folks who understand that when you fall, you get back up. They understand that in order to be successful, there's going to be not some planned failures, but can they keep going no matter what? And if that's you, and you're like, Shay, I resonate with that. If that's you, and you're like, Shay, I know it's not about the money, but it's about the meaning. If that's you, and you're ready, as my good friend Della Torre McNeil will say, to make $1 and a difference at the same time. If that's you, join us over at www.happyentrepreneurtribe.com. show.com. So many. www.happyentrepreneurshow.com. Hit the like button. But when you get there, send me a message. Say, hey, Shay, it's me. I love responding.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Barry, for having us on here. We appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. You know, I can talk to you all day long. That's what we do. So everybody, you heard the man. Pay attention to the Happy Entrepreneur. I want to thank you guys for joining me. We'll be right back right after this.
You've heard the rumblings. You've even thought of starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all the hard work for you so you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or just go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Okay, guys. Welcome back, man. Shay Brown, that's my buddy right there. He was fantastic. I love his. Can you feel his energy? Can you see why he is a happy entrepreneur? You can feel that energy. It's palpable. You need to get that energy for yourself. Get that energy to start your podcast. How does that sound? If you had that same type of energy going in your podcast, imagine the group of people that you could have paying attention to you, listening to you. That's what we want to get. So now, after Shay, it is time for PodQuest.
PodQuest.
That's right, PodQuest. I love PodQuest. PodQuest is where you get to ask a question of one of our previous guests. So if you listen to any of the archive shows and you want to ask a guest a question, you can do that with PodQuest. You just send it in through our tribe and we'll get that question to them and hopefully we can get it answered for you. Well, today's question is for Darnell Jervey Harmon, who was one of our guests. The question is, what is a good number of podcast listeners to have? Woo! Put that to Darnell. She liked that. By the way, she did like that. Now, here's the thing about that. That question can be a little different. I'm going to say this myself. Do you want listeners? Do you want downloads? Because podcasting is different than just a regular radio show. You can have podcasting listeners and podcast downloads. The question to Darnell gave us this answer. She said that it really doesn't matter. Your job is to build it. You have to grow it. Don't concentrate on how many you have. Concentrate on whether you're getting your message out. And she gave an example, and I agree with this example. Let's say you're a speaker, as many of you may be. Many of you may be speakers. If you're a speaker and someone says to you, hey, I got a group in my office I need you to speak to, and it's about 10 people. Those are 10 people that need to hear your message. So if you get your message to 10 people, you may have 10 new clients. Well, guess what? If you have 10 people listening to your podcast or downloading your podcast, there can be 10 new clients. Don't focus so much on the number because that number can change. You may have 20 people that listen this week, 10 the next week, and 50 the next. It can change. Your podcast has to grow. It has to build. You have to focus on the fact that nothing's going to happen overnight, and you're going to have to be able to build that, and you're going to have to be patient with it. You have to be patient with it. So as you're growing, don't get discouraged as people aren't listening, because here's the other thing about podcasting. A lot of people listen to your podcast in the archive, not on the live version. So don't get so caught up in that. Most people listen to podcasts in archive. So someone may listen to your podcast a year from now that you just recorded today. I think that's kind of exciting. because that means you don't have to worry about putting out new stuff all the time, even though you can, because people will still listen to it as long as they find it still relevant and informative. So that's a great thing. Thank you, Darnielle, for that answer. Now it is time for our podcast profile. Our podcast profile is a guy who focuses on millennials in business and helping them grow to 6 and 7 figures. I need to say that again. He focuses on millennials who are in business to help them grow to 6 and 7 figures. I'm talking about none other than Mr. Peter Voog. Peter Voog is an incredible person. His podcast is Game Changers. Man, he changes the game, all right. He helps a lot of people to grow their business. A lot of people in business who are young. And isn't that great? The future is coming up, and he's helping a lot of them because he did it. He did it himself. He's written books on it, and he has started a podcast to show other people how they can do the same thing and get their business going. So I recommend that you guys take a minute, check out Peter Voog. Voog is spelled V-O-O-G-D. That's V as in Victor, O-O-G as in girl, D as in dollars. Peter Voog. Check him out because his podcast, Game Changers, is incredible. I've listened to it. I love it. And I think he does a great job in working with people because, hey, man, if you don't reach back and help those others come up, what are we doing? So he does a great job of doing that with his podcast, Game Changers. So check out Peter Voog. That's our podcast profile today on The Productive Podcaster. Now, it is time for our giveaway. That's right, our giveaway, our podcast giveaway. We are giving away something today, as we do every week, to people who subscribe to The Productive Podcaster and who share The Productive Podcaster. That's right. Today, we are giving away my book, 50 Shades of Wealth. That's right, my book, 50 Shades of Wealth. A free copy goes to Taylor Smith. Taylor, thank you so much for sharing our show, for listening to our show, and for letting others know that The Productive Podcaster is here for them, here to help everyone out there. And we are thankful, very, very thankful for you for doing that. So thank you, Taylor Smith. You get a copy of my book, 50 Shades of Wealth. I want to thank you guys for that. So, guys, we are coming to one of my favorite parts of the show, and I think many of you know what that is. That is where we get to do the productivity quote. Our productivity quote comes today from Chris Jammy. Chris Jammy from Philosophy. I like that. Chris Jammy, her quote is, create with the heart, build with the mind. Ooh, I need to say that twice. It sounds so nice. Create with the heart, build with the mind. So what does that say to me? What does that say to me? That's saying if you're putting together a podcast, it needs to come from here. Your podcast needs to come from your heart. It needs to come from inside. That you need to feel that podcast. You need to believe in that podcast. You need to just yearn to get this information out because you can't wait because it's coming from here. You build that podcast. You grow the business side of it. You grow the mechanics of it in the mind. You take your mind for that part. But your podcast needs to be a mission of the heart, meaning that when you put that thing out, people need to feel that you love what you do. Have you ever listened or watched something and you could tell the person really wasn't feeling it? Yeah, that's because it wasn't coming from the heart. When it's coming from the heart, you know it. Everybody knows it. So make sure that your podcast is one that comes from the heart. So that is our productivity quote for today. Thank you guys for that. Now, we're coming to the end of The Productive Podcast, another episode. I want to thank our guest today, Shay Brown, and I want to thank you guys for listening. This has been an incredible show today, and I want you to make sure that you continue to share The Productive Podcast to your friends, to your tribe, to everyone you know that needs to get a podcast out, because we believe that everybody needs to get their voice out there. So make sure that you are spreading that out to people. Please do that. We thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Productive Podcaster. Thank you for joining us on The Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share The Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.